You ever had one of those days where the world seems determined to remind you of your place? That was me standing there on the 42nd floor of a glass tower I could never afford to even look at. I had a mop in my hand boots, wet from cleaning up a spill near the elevator bank, when a woman in heels sharper than knives rounded the corner. Coffee splashed across her white blouse, dripping down like a stain that didn't belong to her world. She looked at me like I was the stain. Her name was Victoria Grant, the kind of CEO you only see on magazine covers and stock tickers. Cold voice, perfect posture. She leaned in close enough that I saw myself reflected in her eyes. Rough hands, faded uniform. A man who spent more time in boiler rooms than boardrooms. "Do you have any idea what you just ruined?" she hissed. I wanted to explain that the spill on the marble had been reported that I was just doing my job before anyone slipped and broke their neck, but I stopped. She wasn't looking for an explanation. She was delivering a verdict. And her silence, sharp as glass, told me exactly what she thought of men with mops. I gripped the handle tighter, nodded once and muttered, "Understood." What she didn't see, or maybe chose to ignore, was the little girl peeking out from behind the supply room door. My daughter, Emma. 6 years old, hair in 2 messy braids, eyes wide as saucers. She whispered, "Daddy, was that the queen of the angry people?" I crouched down, kissed the top of her head, and said, "Something like that, baby. But don't worry. Even queens need a nap sometimes." Emma laughed. That laugh was my anchor. She didn't know I was already bracing for the storm, that maybe I'd just lost the job that kept a roof over our heads. Not long after the storm outside the building grew wild. Power cut-out lights flickered, and before I knew it, Emma and I were stuck in an elevator with Victoria. Just the 3 of us. The air was thick, the silence even thicker. She pressed the intercom, no response. She cursed under her breath, angry not at me this time, but at the situation she couldn't control. Emma clutched me tight, whispering, "Daddy, I think the building's scared." I smiled even as my chest nodded. "Maybe it is, kiddo, but you're not right." She shook her head and wrapped her arms around me. Victoria stared, lips pressed tight. "How do you do it?" she asked suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" "Carry all that weight, the job, the parenting, and still sound calm." I shrugged. "It's not armor, it's purpose. When you lose enough, you stop trying to control life. You just walk through it the best you can without falling apart." Something cracked in her eyes. Then something human hidden behind boardroom walls. For the first time, I thought maybe she wasn't made of steel after all. The power came back. The elevator hummed and we walked out like nothing happened. But she didn't forget. The next morning, she showed up in the maintenance corridor, heels replaced by flats, holding 2 coffees. She held one out awkwardly like it might bite. "This is an apology," she said. I smirked. "You sure it's not poisoned?" For a second, the corners of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. She said, "If I wanted you gone, I wouldn't waste the coffee." That was the first crack in her armor. Over the next few days, she kept finding excuses to talk. She asked about Emma, about my shifts, about why I never complained when life was clearly crushing me. I didn't know if she was curious or lonely, but for the first time, I saw something other than ice in her. Then came the day in the boardroom. The place looked like a cathedral built for money, marble tables, skyline view, investors worth more than I could count. I was just setting up flowers, hoping Emma's crayons would keep her busy in the hall, when one of them walked in. Victor Hayes, private equity shark, the kind of man who never had to pick up after himself. He looked at Emma like she was dirt tracked in on expensive carpet. "Is this the janitor's kid?" he sneered. "What's next? Groundskeepers giving TED Talks." A couple of board members chuckled. Emma tugged my sleeve, eyes confused. "Daddy? Why is that man being mean?" I froze. My fists clenched. Before I could speak, Victoria walked in. For a second, I thought she'd shut him down. Instead, she said nothing. Her silence screamed louder than his insult. I picked up Emma's backpack, looked her in the eyes, and said quietly, "We're leaving." On the way out, Victor muttered, "Don't you people have a broom closet to hide in?" I stopped, turned, and said I didn't bring my daughter to work. I brought her to where I survive. That shut the room up. But Victoria, she stayed silent. That silence cut deeper than any insult. That night, I wrote a resignation letter, folded it twice, slipped it in an envelope. The next day, I handed it to her myself. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I do," I said. "Because if I stay after what happened, what does that teach my daughter? That silence in the face of cruelty is okay." Her voice cracked. I froze. I shook my head. Freezing is what prey does. You had power. And silence from power isn't freezing, it's alignment. She flinched, and for once, the CEO didn't have a response. But Emma, God bless that child. She waddled in, clutching her backpack, and asked Victoria straight up, "Are you sad?" Victoria blinked, caught off guard. "Yes, I am." "Then say sorry," Emma said matter-of-factly. And she did. She actually did. Not polished, not corporate, just human. I didn't forgive her on the spot, but something shifted. Days later, the storm came. A leaked video painted me as a gold digger, a charity case who climbed into a billionaire's world. They dragged Emma into it too, her face plastered on screens with captions calling me a scam. That broke me in ways no insult ever could. And Victoria, she disappeared. Meetings, press briefings, PR strategies, everything but a word to me. I thought that was it. I thought she chose her empire over us. But then one morning, she stood before cameras, shareholders, the whole city watching, and said words I never thought I'd hear. "I was wrong," she began. "I was wrong to think silence was strength. I was wrong to think image was more important than people. And I was wrong about Jack Miller. He is not a headline. He is a father who taught me what dignity looks like when the world isn't watching." Her voice cracked, tears slipping, but she kept going. "If I have to choose between stockholders and a man who shows his daughter love every single day, I choose him." The room gasped. The world gasped. And me, I sat in a park watching Emma swing, listening to every word through a neighbor's phone. When Emma asked Daddy, "Are we going to find her?" I knew my answer. Weeks later, we stood on the rooftop of that same tower. Not as janitor and CEO, not as stain and judge, as two people trembling, trying. Emma carried the rings on a little satin pillow, sparkly sneakers peeking under her dress. And when the officiant asked if she approved, Emma grinned and said, "Only if they promise to eat ice cream whenever they fight." The rooftop erupted in laughter, and for once I didn't feel invisible. Here's the thing though, life isn't a fairy tale. Some folks will still say I got lucky that she saved me, but the truth is I saved myself long before she noticed. All I ever wanted was to raise my daughter with dignity, if the world finally saw that good. But now, I want to hear from you. Do you think silence is the same as cruelty? Have you ever seen someone stand by while another person got humiliated and wished they'd spoken up? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because maybe the real power isn't money or titles. It's what you do when someone else is watching and when they're not. And if this story hit you somewhere deep, hit that subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it. There are plenty more stories like mine, stories where dignity wins, where the quiet ones finally get seen. Thanks for listening. And remember, sometimes the mop isn't just a mop. Sometimes it's the only weapon you've got to remind the world you're still standing.